Have you ever found yourself completely dysregulated and you're not quite sure what to do to get yourself back to that regulated state to help your nervous system? And maybe you've tried things before, things that other people have suggested, but it just didn't help. Well, maybe you haven't been using the right regulation tool. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, to know what kind of regulation tool to use for different responses to stress here on Boldly Driven Conversations with Bree. So make sure you join me. All right, dysregulation. I have been in a dysregulated state this past week. Just a lot of moving parts, a lot of things, a lot of changes, a lot of stress type things, and trying to respond correctly. And I just found myself really dysregulated at certain times. And so I thought it would be helpful to talk to you guys about some tools for the different kinds of dysregulation, because sometimes our response to being dysregulated is different for different situations, different relationships, whatever it is, the reason that, or whatever it is that's dysregulating us. So there are 4 responses usually to dysregulation when your nervous system is dysregulated. And the first one, first I want to go over what dysregulation is, and what regulation is. So being dysregulated is, and being able to regulate yourself, it's when your body is able to return to safety after being in stress, when you are dysregulated. And being regulated, and how we regulate ourselves, is how we manage big emotions without becoming overwhelmed or shut down or reactive. So, when we are in stress, there are 4 different nervous system responses, mainly. And then there are 2 other kind of like, I don't know what the word is. Like just constant responses over time when you are in stress for a very, very long time and heading towards burnout. So we'll go over the 4 responses first. We're going to go over what it is, who it usually affects, this kind of response affects, what it shows up as, what it looks like, and then how to regulate yourself, a tool to regulate yourself if you find yourself dysregulated in this as part of your response. Okay. So the 4 of them, I'm sure you've heard of them before, are fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. So we're going to talk about those. And when we go into these, the problem when we go into these 4 things is that we lose the ability to reflect. We lose the ability for logic, connection with others, and we lose the ability to make good, healthy choices for ourselves and others around us. Instead, we end up reacting, and it's not really, we end up reacting like just instinctively because we go into survival mode based on other situations that we've had in our life that showed us that this is how we survive. We go into that survival mode, and we're not doing things intentionally. We're just doing things instinctually because of this is how we learned to survive before. Okay. So the first one that we're going to talk about is fight. So fight is when someone feels attacked, they feel a threat, and that they need to defend themselves. They kind of go on the offense in order to defend themselves. Oftentimes this happens to people who felt like they had to protect themselves when they were younger, when they were a child. And oftentimes it can be a very physical thing. It can also be verbal attacks. And so this shows up most often with anger, frustration, rage, compulsive behavior are kind of the first 4 things that kind of come to mind there. And it can be dangerous for both the one who is in the survival mode and is not regulated, who's in the stress place, the person who is fighting, and those that they feel are a threat, especially when we're talking about like relationally. So it can make situations very dangerous. Okay, so how a tool to help you regulate if you find yourself in fight mode. If you find yourself in fight mode, a great regulation tool is to expand your gaze. And so what that means is oftentimes when we are in fight mode, we are pinpointed on something or someone that is filling us with rage. So it could be an email that you read. Like if you're just constantly reading this email or this text message that you got and you just feel yourself getting into fight mode and you just want to answer back and you know you shouldn't answer back. Or if it's someone who's in your presence and you're just focused on that person, a regulation tool for you when you realize you're in that spot is to expand your gaze. So like stop looking at the email, stop looking at the person that you want to fight. And a really great thing is, especially if you're inside, is to look out a window and look outside because it's more expansive. And your gaze is able to go other places. So you're taking yourself out of that present moment. I know often I'm always like, get in the present moment. But when we are in fight mode, we want to come out of that present moment because that present moment is what's causing us stress. And we want to look outside. We want to, if we can, go outside if we're inside. And what this does is it helps our mind calm down, from the moment that is causing us stress. And a follow-up would be to have slow, very intentional breathing. So when you are, oftentimes when you find yourself in flight mode, you're taking a lot of like really short breaths, a lot of them very shallow breaths. So you want to have very slow, intentional breathing. Box breathing, I've talked about this before, can be very, very helpful. That's where you take in a breath, you stop, you take in a breath, you stop, you take in a breath, you stop. And it can be a very helpful tool. So that is if you are in fight mode. The next one is flight mode. I am a flight mode person. I have been in the past for sure. This is where someone senses danger and they want to escape or they want to avoid. This is procrastination. This is keeping really, really busy. This is what this would kind of look like. Oftentimes this will happen to people who have seen that if they keep busy, then they don't have to deal with their emotions. They don't have to deal with their feelings because they're avoiding discomfort. This can also look like people who go and work out whenever they get angry, because they just want to go do something to avoid actually feeling the feelings of anger or disappointment or whatever the uncomfortable feeling is that they're trying to avoid. For me, it was cleaning the house, just, like mad cleaning, going through, because I would avoid the anger feelings that I was having, or I would avoid the discomfortable uncomfortable feeling, that of disappointment or not feeling enough, those kinds of things. And so it's to avoid the conflict in general. This will show up as anxiety in someone, panic attacks, perfectionism, high recovering perfectionist, because you need to have everything in order. And so you go back and you order everything. It could be restlessness. So you can't just rest. Like you can't just be and enjoy and relax. Like you always have to be doing something, because when you relax, then you start thinking, you have feelings. So racing thoughts can be another thing that can happen. So it can happen internally in the mind. So regulation tool to help you if you find yourself in flight mode, if you find yourself not wanting to deal with a problem and you're trying to avoid something, is walking for 10 minutes. This rhythmic movement is what the body wants. Like when I would go mad clean, my body wanted some kind of movement in order to help regulate itself. So go take a walk for 10 minutes. The rhythmic movement will help settle that your nervous system so that you then can respond and feel the feeling that you're avoiding. And it will help you process out that feeling. I did a lot of walking, especially when I was, like last year this time. I just walked, hiking. It was very, very helpful to keep my body moving, my nervous system healing so that I could become more regulated. And it was super helpful. The other thing that is really helpful, a tool that can help you kind of get back to this nervous system being more healthy, is to name what you see around you. So like if you're at work and you can't go take that 10-minute walk, you can look around you and name things. Like name, like right now I have all these orange cones in front of me. And so I would name the orange cone. I would name that it was orange and white and black. It was a cone. It was cylinder, was the texture, the shape, and stay in the present moment of right now. So this is where, like, the opposite of fight, when we want to get out of the present moment because we're in avoidance and we're flying, flighting rather, we want to come back into the present moment so that we are here in this moment and we allow feelings to flow through us so that they're not getting necessarily stuck. The next one is freeze. So freeze is where your body like literally becomes completely overwhelmed and you feel stuck and you're just completely shut down. And the reason your body shuts down is because it wants to preserve energy in case you need to run away, to protect yourself, because you feel like you go into lower energy mode. You make yourself smaller, so that you are not a target of whatever it is that you feel is dangerous. So people who do this, oftentimes they learned that it was safer to go numb, go smaller, to disappear, so that they are not hurt. They are, oftentimes, like, especially like if there was like physical abuse and things like that of that kind of sort, they would kind of just like try to make themselves smaller and disappear, and they just literally freeze. And this also can happen if to people who have learned that they cannot change a situation. Like, they just can't change the situation. They have no power. They feel powerless because for whatever reason, the other person or the situation has more power. And so they just put themselves in freeze mode so that they can take the blows, but kind of like protect themselves and make themselves smaller. And it's it's that survival instinct of kind of like when the, remember roly-polies when we were little and you would play with them, like potato bugs, roly-polies, they roll themselves into like a little ball and make themselves as small as they can so that their outer shell takes the blows. So it's kind of that same concept of freeze. So a great regulation tool, if you find yourself in freeze mode, is to do very small, non-demanding movements of your body. So don't just freeze, like literally freeze and not move. Stretch, stretch your arms out, stretch your legs, gently rock your body back and forth, like just small, gentle movements. If you're able to, go for a very gentle walk, like a little stroll, down the hallway, or if you're at work or inside somewhere, walk yourself very gently outside and maybe go back inside, but very slow, deliberate movements that are not high energy movements. And then follow that up with warmth. So a cozy blanket, a heated blanket, a heating pad, a warm, cozy sweater, something like that, because warmth signals to the body safety. So if you can bring your body back into safe mode, then your nervous system can also start to regulate itself. The fourth response is fawn response. So the fawn response is where they want to stay safe by pleasing other people. So we talk a lot about people pleasing. This is specifically for my people pleaser people who oftentimes find themselves, when they go into stress, into fawn mode, where they please other people by appeasing, caretaking, doing whatever it is that is asked of them, serving in a way that is really unhealthy, because it becomes unhealthy on their bodies, their minds, their spirits, their emotions, all the things. And so they do this to avoid danger by keeping other people happy, by receiving approval, and where approval equals safety. So if they are being approved, if they are being told, good job, then they feel safe. And this most often, is because there was a very critical person in their life when they were very young, and shows up often as like guilt for not doing enough, for not being enough. It shows up as people pleasing. We've talked about that. It shows up as literally living for approval. It shows up with not being okay with anybody disapproving them, over apologizing for things that if they actually do make a mistake, like over apologizing, perfectionism. It shows up as perfectionism. And oftentimes people who fawn as a response, they will not have very good boundaries, and they can be very codependent on other people. So if you find yourself in this state, a good regulation tool for you is to name your needs. Like, name things that you need other people to caretake about you, that, if you are in fawn mode and you're helping someone else all the time to the point where you are hurting yourself, stop when you realize that's what you're doing. And I know it sounds so easy, just stop, but literally stop yourself in the moment and name like 3 things that you need. I need a drink of water. I need to go to the bathroom. I need, a hug, whatever it can be. And then follow up also with things that you like about yourself. Like, what are some things that you like about yourself that don't have anything to do with pleasing other people? And that's hard for someone who is like as a recovering people pleaser, who also would go into fawn mode in some of my relationships where all I did was serve. Stopping and saying good things about myself that had nothing to do with serving other people was really hard when I saw myself doing this. But it was such a wonderful tool to help me regulate. And then follow up on all of this with a way that you are going to hold a boundary. So like, you actually have to hold the boundary, right? There's 2 other things that are like the longer term responses to stress that our nervous system goes into. The first one is called dorsal shutdown. And this is where someone is like in super low energy all the time. It can present itself as like depression. This is when they have like super long-term stress over a situation in a relationship. It can have like extreme trauma, little t trauma, big T trauma. It could be just traumatic experiences over time, like the same trauma over and over and over, repeated stress. And so you go into dorsal shutdown. And this is oftentimes where you'll see people in like burnout. I went through burnout a couple of years ago. And the recovery process is a very long process. And I am mostly all recovered, but every so often I can see little smatterings of it still there hanging out that I haven't necessarily addressed. And so this is because of long-term stress. It comes out as exhaustion, apathy, depression. It comes out as, physical depression, emotional depression. And it just, you have no energy. Like, you're just completely shut down. Your body shuts down. And so when you recognize that this is where you're at, a tool that really helped me is, because what happened was I would like just space out. I would not be present to conversations. And when I realized that's what was happening for me is you start to like focus your eyes on one spot. Now, remember what we said when we were about fight mode is that you need to expand your gaze because you're so focused on one thing. When you're in dorsal shutdown, it's the opposite, where like you're just taking way too much in and like it's overwhelming and you just can't do it anymore. So what you're going to do is you're going to focus your eyes on one spot. It could be your pinkies. It could be, your thumbs. It could be like something on your shirt. It could be like just one little spot, something that's in your gaze. And for about 30 to 60 seconds to re-engage your attention, because your attention is like, oh, you're like everywhere, right? And also sensory things are very helpful. So for some people, it's music. For me, music dysregulated me. But for some people, the sensory of the music, like gentle music or a certain kind of music that brings calmness and peace to the body, can be very helpful. Cold water is a really good thing. So like splashing cold water on your face or on your neck or on your pulse points. Like just kind of like moving your body, like being intentional about moving your body in a non-stressful way. So like a short walk, because you're in very low energy, but doing short walks and then longer. And then the last state of being when you're completely dysregulated for a very long time, you're possibly in burnout, is the shame state. And this is where you have completely low worth. And this oftentimes is where you can experience this through all of the different responses. This can just be a state that happens honestly for your whole life. This can be a state that you find yourself in. This is more of like a mindset state. This mindset state, you have low worth, low self-worth. You don't believe in yourself. Very inwardly, you blame yourself for everything. You make excuses for everyone else. And you really put yourself as the reason why bad things happen. You put yourself in too responsible. You become too responsible for everyone else. This is for people who were highly, highly criticized when they were younger. And oftentimes, even into their adulthood, they are still highly criticized. And it's people who were not given affirmation. They were only criticized. They weren't given affirmation. You can find yourself if you're at a job and you had a lot of criticism as a kid, and if you're in a job and like getting a review and your boss starts out by saying, hey, these are the things we need to work on. They may not even be, it's not the tonality or anything. It's literally the subject matter of being criticized can put you into the shame state. And it's very difficult to get out of that shame state, especially if you've ever been taught about being humble and that you have weaknesses and things like that. Often, and that those weaknesses need to be fixed and that there was something broken in you. It's very difficult to get out of the shame state and into a self-love, self-compassion state, a healthier, regulated state, and not always, whipping yourself with words and deeds. And for some people, even physically, hurting themselves. So this, how it shows up oftentimes is total insecurity, self-doubt, harsh inner critic, and they may even say the things that they're thinking. I have experienced this, and I am thankfully, finally, I feel like bringing myself out of this state through doing a lot of inner healing the last few years. But the state is one of those that very easily you can fall back into it. The way that I have helped myself, that I started helping myself, and this is just a starting tool, if you find yourself in this shame state or if you fall back into it, and this really helps me even now, honestly, when I fall back into a shame state, is listing 3 small wins. 3 small wins or 3 things that I like about myself, that have to do with me, that I have done, that sometimes are not even like performance based, that are just about me. I love my gray hair. I have nothing to do with this gray hair. But I love my gray hair, and because it's fun and unique and has a fun pattern and it's different. So I'll list like either 3 small wins or 3 things I like about myself. And then something that follows up with that has been really wonderful for me is going to somebody that I really trust, that is super safe for me, and I will ask them to reflect something to me that they like about me, something that they find valuable about me, not necessarily something I do, but something about me, my essence as a person, as Brianna, that they really love about me, that they really value about me. And what I do is I will oftentimes ask them to write it down so that I have it for later on, for when I get back into that shame state, that I can reflect on it and I can read it back to myself as like an affirmation. Very, very helpful. Which brings me into my last point on how to regulate ourselves when we find ourselves dysregulated. We need each other. Now, all these tools I've given you are things that you can do by yourself, right? It's that self-regulation. That's what we've been talking about. But the truth of the matter is that we need others. Sometimes there are situations or things that happen in our life that we get completely dysregulated, that honestly, these tools aren't necessarily going to help because we're just so dysregulated for whatever reason. And we really, really need each other, not just tools. And sometimes the thing that's going to regulate us is to be seen, heard, and held, physically held. Physical touch helps and changes us when it's good, healthy physical touch. This is called co-regulation. And when we have co-regulation, when we're seen, heard, held, known, this activates the same things in our brains and in our bodies that helps restore us to safety as if we were doing these restorative tools. So sometimes you just need a hug from someone that you love, or you just need someone to see you when you feel unseen. That self-regulation creates our inner self-regulatory system, which is very, very important. And co-regulation reminds us that we are not meant to do this life alone. We are not meant to have to self-regulate all the time. And sometimes we can't, because we need each other. So, Okay, hopefully all of this helped you today to know how to self-regulate and the importance of co-regulation. And I do have a challenge question for you today. A challenge for you. So if any of this resonated with you, especially like the co-regulation thing, or if you kind of like were able to see yourself as, ooh, this is how I respond. I'm, either fight, flight, fawn, freeze, or I'm in low dorsal, or I am in the shame state. Identify how you respond, when it comes to stress. And then use one of these regulation tools. Write them down. Go through the video and go back and write them down so that you have them as a note for yourself on a little post-it note or something. So for the next time that you find yourself dysregulated, use the tool. And let me know if you have other tools that you use that really help you. Because you have to have the right tool to help the regulation. If you are trying to do like a fast walk when that is what's not going to help you and it's actually going to put you into fight mode rather than helping you when you're in, freeze mode, you're not doing the right regulation tool. You're actually hurting yourself. So there are specific tools for specific things. All right. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.